Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 3 based on novel. So let's start. Desolate Hall is situated in the southwest corner of Sect. A dozen over giant peaks that touched the heavens formed a circle. On top of these giant peaks, streams of silver-like waterfalls poured down. A loud rumbling sound ricocheted across the entire domain. On top of these large peaks, one could see numerous large halls. Meanwhile, countless number of figures were just like ants as they traversed across it. It released a vibrant and prosperous atmosphere. Surrounding these large peaks was a several thousand-mile-long river that swept across it. It looked just like a river in heaven. When one got near to it, one could actually realize that this enormous river was actually formed from Nirvana Chi. A genuine pill river. The resources of these super sects evidently did not lose out much to those ancient sects. When Lin Dong saw that hovering pill river, that was the first thought that flashed past his mind. Promptly, he was secretly excited by it. He had previously experienced the benefits from cultivating in a pill river. However, due to time constraints in the ancient battlefield, he could not linger on and he only briefly enjoyed it before he left regretfully. Therefore, when he saw that there was actually a pill river in Desolate Hall, his heart was naturally filled with joy. In Desolate Hall, there are 3,000 disciples and 300 direct disciples. All of them are excellent members who have been through the most stringent tests. On the outskirts, there are tens of thousands of branch disciples. If they are able to pass the tests, they are always welcome to become full-fledged disciples of Desolate Hall. Standing beside Lin Dong, Wu Dao pointed at several dozen large peaks. There was a tinge of pride in his tone. 300 direct disciples, 3,000 disciples, tens of thousands of branch disciples. When Lin Dong heard the figures, he was instantly shocked. He was clearly aware that in order to become a direct disciple of a super sect, according to the 100 Empire Wars rules, one must step into the Nirvana Golden ranking. However, right now, just the number of direct disciples of Desolate Hall already stands at 300. The 300 of them were obviously the elite and they must be top geniuses just like Lanying and the rest. Even after adding together the total number of Nirvana Golden ranking members in the current 100 Empire War, there was less than half of this number. Based on this, it seems like these super empires truly had many other avenues to recruit members. Lin Dong did not inquire about the 3 other halls. However, with just a rough gauge, he was able to deduce that their numbers surely exceed the Desolate Hall. It seems like the total strength of the Dao sect was truly terrifying. This also allowed Lin Dong to clearly witness the terror of a super sect. By possessing such strength, in the Eastern Xian region, how could any empire compete with such a monstrous beast? With these terrifying disciples as a foundation, one sect would definitely become powerful. Lin Dong, based on your performance, you naturally possess the qualifications to become a direct disciple. However, there is something that this old man must mention. Even in the Desolate Hall, you will face intense competition. Therefore, if you want to enjoy preferential treatment, you must prove yourself. Else, you will be quickly replaced. Wu Dao's expression was solemn as he stared at Lin Dong and said, "This type of competition is also a way to train our disciples. Therefore, we will not easily intervene in fights between disciples. If you want to continue to enjoy your privileges, the only thing you require is the ability to assert your right. You are the current champion of the 100 Empire War and you have recruited many disciples for our Dao sect. We will naturally have to reward you for it. However, whether you have the ability to enjoy this reward will still depend on your own abilities." "What reward?" Lin Dong smiled as he curiously asked. "Pill River Head Immersion." Wu Dao gently smiled as he pointed to that massive Pill River and leisurely said, "In the deep region of the Pill River, there will be some extremely pure Nirvana Chi generated each year. We term it as the Nirvana Golden Chi. That stuff is extremely beneficial for Nirvana stage practitioners. At that time, the Hall Master and I will personally manipulate the Nirvana Golden Chi to temper your body and your internal Yuan power. If you are able to handle it, your strength would surely surge." "Sounds pretty good." Lin Dong's eyes gently lit up. Something that required the combined efforts of both Hall Master must be pretty good. Of course it is. This Nirvana Golden Chi is originally reserved for Desolate Hall's top disciple. If it was not for the fact that you have performed a service of great merit, you will not be able to enjoy it. Wu Dao rolled his eyes at Lin Dong and said, "Who is the strongest disciple in Desolate Hall now?" Lin Dong gently smiled and asked, "The 4 senior direct disciples. All of them are at 7 Yuan Nirvana stage and they are no pushovers." With his hands behind his back, Wu Dao sadistically teased. 7 Yuan Nirvana stage, huh? Lin Dong's eyes gently hardened. Promptly, he slowly nodded his head before he softly said, "They are powerful indeed. However, it is not difficult to overtake them. With Lin Dong's current strength, he could fight evenly with a 6 Yuan Nirvana stage expert. Therefore, if he continued to improve, he could most likely contend with a 7 Yuan Nirvana stage expert. Right now, he had just entered the Desolate Hall. Therefore, he should have time to slowly catch up with those seniors." When he saw Lin Dong's smiling face, Wu Dao secretly nodded his head. He had personally witnessed Lin Dong's rise during the ancient battlefield. For a young man from a low-rank empire to stand out in the battlefield was already a miracle by itself. If you want to obtain the qualifications to learn the great Desolate scripture, you must defeat them. However, that is for later. With regards to the Pill River head immersion that we promised, there are only a few rare individuals in Desolate Hall that have enjoyed this treatment. Since you are only a new disciple, there are bound to be some disciples who feel disgruntled. With regards to this issue, you would have rely on your own abilities. We will not intervene. Wu Dao casually said. Understood. Lin Dong gently smiled as he nodded his head. Besides, what do your 2 other friends plan to do? Wu Dao's eyes suddenly turned towards Little Martin and Little Flame, before he asked. He was clearly aware of their true identities. Therefore, he understood that Little Martin would not join Dao Sect. In 2 days' time, I will depart together with Little Flame. Little Martin casually said. Depart? When Lin Dong heard his words, he was instantly shocked. Don't worry, I will take him out for a spin. There is a place in Eastern Xian region which is extremely beneficial for him. It is best for him to train over there. Little Martin smiled as he said. Big brother, second brother said that I will be able to improve rapidly at that place. Let me follow him first. If you face any problems, use the Yuan spirit to send a message to second brother. We will come immediately. Little Flame scratched his head while he grinned. Don't worry, with me around, nothing will happen. Little Martin smiled at Lin Dong. When he saw the situation, Lin Dong hesitated for a moment. Promptly, he chose not to dwell on this issue. The reason why Little Martin chose to follow Lin Dong was because he was worried for him. Now that he had joined the Dao Sect, as long as no accidents occur, he should be in safe hands. In that case, Little Martin could enjoy more freedom. Furthermore, Lin Dong knew that Little Martin had many secrets. Since the latter did not wish to tell him, he did not want to ask him as well. Right now, he was still not powerful enough. Therefore, Little Martin's knowledge was of little use to him. All right, we have reached the Desolate Hall. All of you will take the rest of the day to recuperate. Tomorrow, we will head to the Pill River stage. At that time, we will perform the Pill River head immersion for you. Wu Dao led the crowd to a huge mountain. With a wave of his arm, several disciples immediately leapt forth. Following which, he looked at Lin Dong and the rest before he spoke. Yes. When they heard his words, the crowds responded respectfully. Wu Dao gently nodded his head. Promptly, a smile appeared on his face. Besides, congratulations on becoming official disciples of Desolate Hall. This can be considered as your home in the future. When they heard his words, a grateful expression surfaced on Liu Bai and the rest's faces. After a long and arduous journey, they had finally become disciples of a super sect. Just like the spot where Lin Dong and the rest reached, in the eastern side of Dao Sect, there was also towering mountains. The atmosphere here was actually more majestic than the Desolate Hall. This was the place where the Sky Hall was located. In the sky above the Sky Hall, there was also a hovering Pill River. Furthermore, this Pill River was larger than the one at Desolate Hall. At a cursory glance, you could see no end to it and could only feel that rich and potent nirvana chi drifting off from the river. It even caused its surroundings to warp. Upon closer inspection, one could see several floating platforms above the Pill River. Seated above the platform were several disciples quietly training. Streams of powerful vibrations continuously emerged from within their bodies. Most of these platforms were scattered around the surroundings of the Pill River. Nonetheless, typically speaking, the closer it go to the center of the Pill River, the less platforms there were. Meanwhile, the number of disciples seated above also decreased. Swoosh! A splitting wind sound suddenly rang out above the Pill River. Faintly, it was accompanied by the crisp sound of an instrument which sounded just like a tina. That noise caused several disciples to open their eyes to stare at that alluring figure flashing past the horizon. Meanwhile, they seemed to be intoxicated by that sound. The alluring figure in the sky did not bother about their glances as she directly headed to the deepest spot in the Pill River. Finally, she landed above the final platform. When that alluring figure landed, her red dress swayed. It was actually Ying Huan, who had previously bickered with Lin Dong. When she landed on that platform, she immediately looked in front. At the edge of that platform was a lady quietly seated down. Meanwhile, rich and potent nirvana chi swiveled around her. That lady was dressed in black ceremonial robes and she had a slim figure. Her soft green hair was casually tied up by a green lace and the tip was faintly curved at a sharp angle. Her hands were placed on her knees and there was a seal on her jade fingers. Above her hand seal, a green longsword was placed between two seals while a faint sword aura slowly emerged. It actually forcefully split apart the surrounding nirvana chi. Sis. When Ying Huan saw the lady dressed in black ceremonial robes, she involuntarily pouted her tiny mouth. The lady in front of her was actually the number 1 younger generation member in Dao Sect, the big sister of Sky Hall, Ying Xiao. On the platform, when the black-dressed lady heard the crisp voice behind her, her tightly shut eyes opened slowly. The corners of her mouth curled upward slightly, making her cold-looking face somewhat gentle in an instant. I thought you followed Uncle Wu Dao to select the new disciples? Why the long face? The black-dressed asked as her lily-white hands took hold of a green-colored long sword. Then, she stood up gracefully while looking at Ying Huan with a tinge of joy in her eyes. Don't mention it, Ying Huan furrowed her eyebrows and pouted her lips. She then continued, initially, I wanted to see how capable the champion of the 100 Empire War is. In the end, it turns out that he is just an arrogant idiot. Why? The black-dressed lady shifted her gaze towards the surging Pill River and exclaimed softly without making a big fuss. That fellow actually forsake the chance to enter the Sky Hall and chose the Desolate Hall instead. Ying Huan grumbled angrily. Oh. The black-dressed lady was slightly startled. She was just as surprised as Ying Huan. Apparently, this was the first time she heard of such an incident. That fellow said that he wants to learn the great Desolate scripture. He's quite ambitious, the black-dressed lady replied softly. He's indeed quite ambitious, but I'm afraid his ambition is what that's going to kill him in the end. If the great Desolate scripture is so easy to be mastered, the Desolate Hall would have surpassed the Sky Hall a long time ago. That time, Sis meditated before the Desolate tablet for a month and still failed to learn anything from it. How can that fellow succeed then? Ying Huan snorted. I have no affinity with the great Desolate scripture. Others might actually be able to do so. The black-dressed lady pointed the tip of her green-colored long sword towards the Pill River. Traces of powerful sword aura began to emerge from the sword. To master the great Desolate scripture, one needs more than just affinity. Sis, don't tell me you think that fellow has a chance of succeeding. Ying Huan asked. The black-dressed lady turned her head slightly and replied softly, 20% chance. Are you saying he has a 20% chance of succeeding? How can it be? You haven't even met him yet. Ying Huan exclaimed while her eyes widened up. A person who comes from a low-ranked empire and is able to surpass those super empire's geniuses is no simpleton. Becoming the champion of the 100 Empire War doesn't depend on luck alone, the black dresses lady explained with a gentle voice. Who knows what will happen? There's nothing special about that lad, Ying Huan pouted her mouth unbelievably. Then, she continued, that fellow still dares to wager with me. Ying Huan rolled her eyes upon finishing her sentence. Just as she was about to start speaking again, the indifferent voice of the black-dressed lady came from behind. Don't bother me with this kind of issue. There are a lot of people who are willing to stick up for you. You don't need me. I don't want to be distracted by such issues. I have more important things to care about. You merely lost by a single move to that Ling Qingshu from the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace, ain't it? Ying Huan grumbled. However, just as she finished her sentence, she could sense the sword aura that was pervading the platform intensified in an instant. Following which, she quickly shut her mouth. Little girl, if you feel that you have too much freedom these days, I can confine you for a few days. The black-dressed lady's cold voice silenced Ying Huan instantly. Upon hearing this, Ying Huan turned her body and left without any hesitation. Upon hearing Ying Huan scuttle away, the black-dressed lady pursed her lips lightly. The green-colored long sword in her hand bolted upright abruptly. At that instant, the aura of the sword pervaded the entire sky. A 10,000 feet long rift split across the surging Pill River instantly. After quite a while, the rift then began to soothe down gradually. Vigorous Nirvana Chi formed in front of the black-dressed lady. Indistinctly, the Nirvana Chi materialized into an illusory figure. That figure appeared to be Ling Qingshu. The black-dressed lady's eyes were as deep as an abyss. She reached out her slender lily-white index finger and dabbed the illusory figure lightly with it. Then, the aura of her sword surged forward and destroyed the illusory figure into nothingness. Ling Qingshu, I will defeat you. The next day, as the morning sunshine poured over the Dao Sect, an unusual commotion broke out stealthily across the enormous mountains of the Desolate Hall. This commotion originated from the spreading of the news that there was a 100 Empire Wars champion among the Desolate Hall's newly selected disciples. Furthermore, this champion unconventionally forsook the chance to enter the Sky Hall. Instead, he chose to enter the Desolate Hall. Naturally, the issue that the Desolate Hall's disciples cared about the most was that this new disciple was going to receive the Pill River head immersion on his first day. Generally speaking, only those disciples who performed exceedingly well would be qualified to receive the Pill River head immersion. Clearly, a lot of disciples had been working hard for this privilege. However, no one had expected the privilege of the Pill River head immersion this year to be seized by a newcomer. Undoubtedly, this issue had infuriated numerous disciples. Even though they knew a 100 Empire Wars champion could significantly increase the number of potential disciples in the future and such reward was completely deserving, they were still not happy about it. A newcomer like him, who had not even familiarized himself with the place, dared to claim such privilege. From the current batch of disciples' perspective, he obviously did not show any respect to his seniors. On the south of the Desolate Hall near to where the Pill River was, there was an exceptionally enormous mountain. On the mountain summit, there was a vast platform. At this point of time, the platform was swarming with people's shadows, appearing extremely crowded. In front of the platform, there was a group of people crowding around. In the center of the group, there was a grey-clothed guy looking gloomily at the Pill River ahead of him. Everyone could sense the anger within him. Senior Tong Chuan, don't be angry anymore. No one has expected this. Numerous Desolate Hall's disciples were consoling the grey-clothed guy, attempting to soothe the anger in his heart. While speaking, these disciples felt somewhat helpless. Even though they felt that Tong Chuan had the highest chance of obtaining the privilege of the Pill River head immersion among the direct disciples and he was fully committed to getting it, they did not expect a newly joined disciple to crash the party. Furthermore, this newcomer was one step faster in seizing the nomination. It was no wonder that Tong Chuan was so outraged. Humph, he's merely a new disciple. Even if he is the champion of the 100 Empire War, he still has to understand the concept of seniority. He has to stay in the Desolate Hall for at least 2 years to be qualified for the Pill River head immersion. Tong Chuan roared coldly. Upon hearing these words, the Desolate Hall's disciples surrounding Tong Tron could only laugh bitterly. It seemed like Tong Tron had no intention of letting the matter rest. Soon after, these disciples began to sympathize with the new disciple. Even though he had done a meritorious deed for the Tao sect, the Desolate Hall still had its own rules and regulations. Certain privileges had to be earned with capabilities. If Tong Tron was to take action on purpose, even if the new disciple was able to obtain the privilege of the Pill River head immersion, his reputation would suffer significantly. With regards to his capability, the disciples surrounding Tong Tron had not much worries about the latter. Tong Tron had been in the Desolate Hall for 3 years and he had reached the 6-yuan nirvana stage. He was considered rather powerful among the direct disciples. Furthermore, that new disciple was reported to be only at the 4-yuan nirvana stage. At this moment, the number of disciples who had received the news and rushed towards the platform before Pill River was rather huge. Other than Tong Tron, there was a lot of other direct disciples. However, these direct disciples were not as infuriated as Tong Tron. They merely folded their arms and waited eagerly for what was going to happen next. They clearly knew that the new disciple, whose name was Lin Dong, would not obtain the privilege of the Pill River head immersion so easily. Swoosh! As numerous disciples waited on the Pill River platform, the sound of wind breaking echoed through the air suddenly. Soon after, more than 10 figures flew from afar and landed on the platform. The guy leading the group was Lin Dong himself. As Lin Dong and his counterparts arrived, the initially rowdy platform quietened down instantly. Numerous gazes converged on them. Most of their eyes contained a playful tinge. Lin Dong, who had just landed on the platform, could naturally sense the unusual atmosphere. However, his face did not show the slightest bit of surprise. He clearly understood that even though he was a direct disciple, a new disciple like him could not easily convince the crowd of his strength. Those disciples who were of higher seniority were bound to brood over the fact that he obtained the nomination for the Pill River head immersion. Lin Dong also knew how to deal with this kind of situation. Such a group of vigorous young men. Seems like you won't be lonely in the future, little Martin chuckled as he looked smilingly at the surrounding Desolate Hall's disciples. Lin Dong nodded his head slightly. Are you the direct disciple that has just entered the Desolate Hall, Lin Dong? Not long after Lin Dong appeared, Tong Tron could not help but took a step forward and asked with a deep voice. There's going to be a good show. When the crowd saw Tong Tron take a step forward, the same words echoed through their minds. Nice to meet you, senior, Lin Dong smiled and cupped his fist. Lin Dong, you have indeed done a meritorious deed for the Tao sect by becoming the champion of the 100 Empire War. However, I don't think it's wise to take credit for this. Every year, only one person is allowed to enjoy the Pill River head immersion. Given your current status in the hall, I'm afraid you're not qualified to enjoy this privilege. Therefore, Senior shall advise you to come and fight for this privilege again 2 years later. That might be a better decision for you, Tong Tron said indifferently. Is it that I don't have the capability or the qualifications? Lin Dong smirked. Tong Tron squinted his eyes and replied, since you have asked, I can only tell you that you have neither. Understood. Lin Dong nodded his head. Then, under the numerous astonished gazes from the Desolate Hall's disciples, Lin Dong cupped his fists towards Tong Tron. Senior, please guide me. Tong Tron was not the only one who wanted to establish dominance. As a newcomer, Lin Dong clearly understood the importance of such action as well. And right now, it seemed like the perfect chance to do so. When Lin Dong's words resounded across the platform, a soft whoosh could be heard coming from all directions. Quite a few Desolate Hall disciples were stunned as Lin Dong's straightforwardness had completely exceeded their expectations. He sure is a bold and charismatic fellow. A few of the direct disciples were observing this moment play out, while a hint of admiration surfaced in their eyes. Tong Tron could not stomach what happened today, and the one way he could settle this was not complex, which was to fight. Strength was an entry pass at any place, and it was no exception within the Desolate Hall. Tong Tron actually understood that even after he personally taught Lin Dong a lesson, it was still nigh impossible to change the fact that he would receive the Pill River head immersion. Since Lin Dong had made contributions towards the Tao sect, the two heads of the Desolate Hall would not withdraw his reward just because of his opposition. The reason he continued to do so was, firstly, he was unable to swallow this down, and secondly he thought that he could press down the invincible air of this new disciple. This was to let him know that although he was the champion of the 100 Empire War, he would still have to obediently withdraw the air of arrogance brought by this title. However, what caused Tong Chuan to feel surprised was that Lin Dong actually turned from a guest into a host, and before allowing him to explain fully, he had already sent out his challenge. Due to his actions, regardless of whether he ended up winning or losing, at the very least, his courage had caused quite a few people to hold him in high esteem. The matter of humiliation would not be further mentioned. Regardless, Lin Dong was still a new member of the Desolate Hall. Losing to a senior disciple like Tong Chuan would not be considered as humiliating. At an area that was quite far from the Pill River, two shadows were floating in the air, with their gazes aimed towards the Pill River. One of them was the vice head of the Desolate Hall, Wu Dao, while the other one was an old man dressed in white, with a head full of white hair, making him appearing quite senile. However, the occasional glow that passed by swiftly indicated that he was a senior of uncommon background. This old man dressed in white was none other than the present head of the Desolate Hall, Chen Zhen. This brat sure has a unique way of doing things, Wu Dao said while grinning and staring at the Pill River platform from far away. Seems like you truly hold Lin Dong in high regard, said the old man dressed in white softly before giving a faint smile. His talent coupled with his disposition would make him one of the top picks and a very good seedling. If he is groomed properly, I feel that he would be able to become the most outstanding person within the younger generation members of Desolate Hall. Wu Dao gently caressed his beard, before contemplating for a while and said, actually, even if he was compared to those monstrous talents of the Sky Hall, he might not fall in a disadvantageous position. There aren't many youngsters that could make you utter such words. Desolate Hall Master Chen Zhen gave a laugh while he stared far into the distance, before nodding his head and said, there are quite a few secrets within that brat's body, however that does not matter to us. The current him is already the disciple of our Dao sect. As long as he does not do anything that would bring harm to the sect, he would forever be a disciple of our Dao sect. Who do you think would have a greater chance of victory between them? Chen Zhen asked as he looked towards Wu Dao. Tong Chuan will likely suffer. Wu Dao grinned as he replied. Thinking back, in the ancient battlefield, even Cao Yu was forced into a sorry state by Lin Dong. If one tried to judge Lin Dong's prowess from his appearance alone, one would be truly mistaken. Oh. Chen Zhen raised his eyebrows before looking at the platform with gusto and said with a faint voice, I want to see just how outstanding is that little fellow that you hold in high regard. You are definitely courageous. Tong Chuan stared at the skinny-looking youth in front of him, his eyes narrowing and flames of anger could be faintly seen within them. Thinking about it, this was the first time that he had been treated so haughtily by a new disciple. As such, he felt no need to be polite and took a step forward, before his wild Yuan power erupted just like a thunderstorm. This level of fluctuation was a level stronger than the Qian Yuan dynasty Qin Qian. On the account that you are my junior, I'll not bully you. After 10 rounds, if you have not lost, Tong Chuan will not say a single word on the matter of the Pill River head immersion. Do you dare to accept this challenge? Tong Chuan's low and deep voice, carried by his vigorous Yuan power, resounded across the platform akin to the rumbling of thunder. Senior, please carry on, I am afraid there might not be a need for 10 rounds. Lin Dong's body faintly trembled as Yuan power within his body started to surge. Although it was not as fearsome as that of Tong Chuan, it immediately dispelled the pressure that was being emanated by Tong Chuan. Having courage is a good thing. However, one must know when not to go too far. Since you are that haughty, all right then, let me test out what ability do you, the champion of the 100 Empire War, have. Tong Chuan gave a cold snort, as the flames of anger in his eyes grew larger. He felt that if this new disciple was not taken care of today, there would be no place for him in the future. Boom! Tong Chuan gripped his large hand, before a radiant golden light erupted from his body and directly transformed into a large golden blade. A frightening and astonishing fluctuation was being emitted by that large blade. Bang bang! Tong Chuan took a step forwards, as the large golden blade in his hand gave a sudden tremble. Instantly, 10 blade rays exploded out, which caused even the air to be sliced apart, creating incisive howling noises that reverberated sharply. Facing Tong Chuan's attack, Lin Dong merely extended his palms, and with a grasp, green light seemingly erupted from his palms and directly morphed in a green-colored scale shield. Ting ting. The blade slashes sliced heavily on the green-colored scale shield. However, it only caused some sparks and did not achieve any noticeable results. After easily blocking Tong Chuan's probing attack, Lin Dong did not consider the need of continuing such useless probing. After experiencing bout after bout of vicious battles in the ancient battlefield, he did not enjoy these soft probing attacks. Immediately, his body rushed forward explosively. As he gripped his palm, a black iron seal appeared within his palms. Boom! With the appearance of the black iron symbol, it caused violent winds to stir up, before turning into a vast and enormous shadow that viciously pressed down on Tong Chuan, crushing him beneath it. Heavenly Soul Treasure. Tong Chuan was startled by the sudden appearance of the black metal symbol, causing a serious glow to flash past his eyes, before swiftly retreating, while his hands moved lightning fast to break the symbol. Demonic Desolation Fist. When the seal started to fluctuate, Tong Chuan sent a fist rumbling forward. Dreadful yuan power started to condense on his fist, before finally emitting a desolate aura akin to a great desolation and viciously smashed against the black iron symbol that was oppressing him. Bang! A loud and clear sound resounded out as the black iron symbol was literally smashed by Tong Chuan's fist, before a frightening amount of power started to radiate outwards, causing even the air to start twisting. After seeing this scene, it caused Liu Bai and the rest's facial expressions to change. It seems like he was indeed worthy of being a direct disciple of Desolate Hall. In fact, the person in front of them was likely more powerful than Qin Tian. Although you have a heavenly soul treasure, don't assume that it is something that you can rely on, shouted Tong Chuan as he dashed forward explosively. His arm suddenly trembled and unleashed the same vicious fist as before. However, this time around, the howling noise blotted out the whole sky. This grade of boundless eruption of power had everyone change their countenance. Facing the incoming fist shade whose howling filled the skies, Lin Dong did not retreat and instead advanced forward. With a movement of his body, he landed on top of the black iron symbol that was flying upside down. After stabilizing himself, with a single thought, vigorous yuan power, mental energy and devouring force rapidly entered the archaic formation within his body. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Following the unison of the three different energies within the archaic formation, the yuan power that was gushing out of Lin Dong turned into a mysterious grayish-black color. It faintly emitted the strength of destruction, which was several times stronger than his previous yuan power. That light. On the platform, there were numerous Desolate Hall disciples who were watching this scene. Upon seeing that light, their vision all hardened as they simultaneously discovered the sudden birth of a fearsome and mysterious energy within Lin Dong's body. When the three sources of energy fused together, Lin Dong's power rose instantly. His aura was not weaker than the 6 yuan nirvana stage of Tong Chuan. Dragon Gate. Lin Dong stomped his feet, causing the boundless grayish-black air to directly integrate with the black iron symbol with lightning fast speed. At the same time, the black-colored dragon spirit, which was residing in the iron symbol, opened its dragon eyes, causing a sinister aura to rapidly fill the surrounding air. As more and more grayish-black energy integrated with the iron symbol, the dragon spirit took to the skies, as a vigorous strength started to emanate from the ice-cold-looking black dragon scales that fully covered its humongous body. He actually summoned the dragon spirit. When the humongous dragon spirit appeared, there were many surprised shrieks coming from the platform, as they were all astonished by Lin Dong's move. Roar! The dragon spirit faced the heavens and roared, instantaneously showing off its anger, while a fearsome amount of energy formed a humongous arcing shield, causing cracks and fractures to appear on the platform below. Bang bang bang! The large desolation fist after image filled the air with vicious fist winds as it directly landed on the body of the dragon spirit and exploded outwards. However, it was unable to halt the momentum of the dragon spirit. With the unison of the three energies within his body and coupled with the might of a heavenly soul treasure, Lin Dong's current strength could be compared favorably to a 6 yuan nirvana stage expert. Hence, he was obviously not weaker compared to Tong Chuan. It was at this moment that Tong Chuan finally realized. Immediately, his facial expression turned exceptionally serious. He tried his best to restrain the slight fluttering of his heart by taking a deep breath. He slowly raised a golden large blade in his hands, however there was a faint pale white tint present on his face. Ring. In contrast to the paleness on his face, the golden large blade in his hand started to violently tremble. The golden light was mysteriously withdrawn, and on the golden light appeared faint and subtle cracks. From afar, it looked like a vast piece of parched land, as a desolate aura started to emanate. This light. After seeing the light, the expression on those desolate hall disciples' faces changed, as they could recognize the martial art that Tong Chuan was executing. One roar after another started to resound from the platform as Tong Chuan suddenly raised his head. Promptly, his hand seemingly transformed into an earth-desolating blade. As he suddenly sliced down, an icy cold sound, which carried the air of desolation, started to spread from his mouth. Desolation blade. This video will end here.